Hi, this is Kristen Johnson, and this is my self-analysis of the 10 Faces of Innovation. As I was reading the book, I found that I could resonate with all of the different faces, but I really reflected on that it didn't just come to me overnight. There were people in my career, in my life, that helped me kind of see those different faces and let those faces emerge. So my project will be kind of interviewing these people and having a self-reflective conversation with them of how maybe they got to that place and why they believe, and maybe I believe, that they are the different faces of innovation. I am here with Chrissy Bosley, who I believe is the anthropologist, and she has taught me a lot about how to look and interact with different kids and people around us. So, Chrissy, what do you think is the hardest part about being the anthropologist in general and kind of getting a read of the situation?
I think taking the time to get the read of the situation instead of just wanting to follow your first instinct and just jump in and start doing something, but slowing down and seeing what's going on and what might actually be best in that situation.
So you teach autistic support, and you have a lot of kids who have a lot of different needs, personality traits. How do you kind of get them all together and get their teachers on board with what's going on with them as well? Like how to read the situation?
Communication and practice. My students don't have that naturally. They don't read the situation. They don't read their own behavior. They don't read the reaction of others. So we...
It's true.
I don't want to talk down on them.
It's okay. They're great.
They aren't usually aware of it. So it's trying to practice and make them realize if someone's giving you this face, what it means. And
I find it's hard.
A lot of blunt conversations.
When I'm reflecting, I find it's hard sometimes if I'm the anthropologist in a situation, it's just kind of understanding not to react right away, but to understand where the kid's coming from. So I learned a lot about that from you, of just reading that situation beautifully. You also maintain a spirit of curiosity. So I think you're always trying to evolve the program, whatever program you're in, whether it was Link Crew we did together, we're in Best Buds together, and also just special ed in general. How do you keep the curiosity rolling, or how to get things better and easier and more efficient?
I think by working with other people is key. I think that's why Link Crew worked well. I think that's why Best Buds look well, because
that works well because we work together.
No, but it's true because we talk about the ideas, we reflect together and talk about this worked, this didn't work, and we don't just settle for things being mediocre.
Yes.
We want to keep things getting better. When it comes to my class, it's kind of thrown into it.
Yep.
Didn't know a lot going in. So I'm still doing webinars when they're available and trying to learn more and grow in that way, because you just can't settle for.
Do you read books?
A lot.
A lot? Like a lot of educational books? I got a few for you. Anyway, this is Chrissy Bosley, and she's the anthropologist. I'm here with Jocelyn Rupert, who I believe is the experimenter and has taught me tons of stuff about how to work through problems. This is Jocelyn, and Jocelyn, tell me how you have experimented throughout your career here at Susquehanna.
I think it started day one. It's just my personality. Even in my home life, my personal life, I'm always trying new things. So whether it be in a computer class, making it more engaging, creating modules that I'm not 100% sure are going to work for each student, but willing to try it out, has always been fun for me. And the kids always enjoy going on the ride with me.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I make sure that they know what's happening and that it is a trial and there's adventure in that.
Yeah, I found that I see myself as somewhat of an experimenter at times when you need to kind of build a new idea and innovation. But I find my biggest roadblock would be when you ask for permission of some nature and you come up with the answer of no, or there's stumbling, or this is why we can't happen. What's your frustration at times being the experimenter?
I think it's my own personal frustration because I don't feel as truly satisfied. And sometimes that can be frustrating because I have to say, okay, stop. This is good enough. It's okay. Try to enjoy the process. Try to enjoy the product and not always be critiquing it. So I think for me, it's my own personal roadblock, I guess you could say.
As the experimenter, have you found that you evolve over the years with innovation? Like, I know what your curriculum looked like a few years ago, and now it's kind of evolved into something totally new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about innovation, we always think it's about technology.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm finding the more that I create, the less technology there is.
Right.
Because it tends to be about relationships, and it tends to be about just a process that you're going through that has absolutely nothing to do with technology.
That's awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm with Lisa Little, who I believe is the cross-pollinator. I think that I show some signs of cross-pollination in the sense of I've taken different things I've learned from different jobs, different people, and kind of put them into my new position. So tell me how you are that face of innovation.
Well, in my position, I'm expected to meet deadlines and complete a lot of work in a short window of time. And this expectation has forced me to use my experience and background to make my productivity as efficient as possible. As I took on new roles and new responsibilities in the district, I looked to my past experience and drew on that to better manage my time.
Efficiency,
and
absolutely.
Learn new shortcuts and skills, and I just try to apply them in all my new positions.
I love that. And you were at the high school at first.
Mm-hmm.
Main office guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do this in my head today. Main office guidance.
Back to the main office.
Back to the main office. Transportation.
And now the assistant
superintendent's
office.
Love it. So why did you have to become this face? Like, why did you have to evolve to kind of be the cross-pollinator?
Because every job had different responsibilities.
Yes.
Had different tasks that I had to do. So I had to learn all the new tasks of all the different positions that I've had. But they build foundations as you move forward. And
Absolutely. I think the hardest part for me, reflecting as potentially a cross-pollinator, the hardest part would be trying to find the new system and trying to think, like, what did I do in the last job to help me with this job? Because I know something, but you have to kind of catalog everything in your mind. Where do you struggle with this face?
I struggle a lot, not so much with the process, but with the people who might not be receptive to what you want to suggest.
Sure.
And,
change is hard. Yes.
Exactly.
Change is hard. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're resistant to change. They get comfortable. They get complacent. They know what they have to do every single day. And when somebody new comes in and says, let's not do it that way, let's do it this way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lisa. That was the cross-pollinator. For the hurdler, I have chosen my mom, as I believe she has hurdled a lot of different things in her life. Unfortunately, I couldn't interview her because she has stage 4 ovarian cancer. But I've learned from her that I think hurdlers do everything for other people, meaning they put the other person first to make sure the obstacle has been overcome. Love you, Mom.
Is
okay.
And me.
I'm with JC Lewis, who is the collaborator, and Liz Sergei, and right now they're collaborating on math where they co-teach.
So,
Let's listen for a minute.
I don't know what kind of extension that we want for these people. Okay. And I also have I can give you these quizzes if you want them specifically. They're all here.
Yeah, I'll take those. That way I can look at them. And so I'm creating something for Monday, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So if you want to focus on those people, and then that's easy enough to do, and then we'll extend with those. There's only a few here, but even some of these folks, like a lot of them only had like one area of weakness based on their quiz.
Yeah.
So what he did was he looked at the quizzes and broke it down into groups where they can all collaborate together. This is great.
I'll leave this here.
This is the collaborator.
You just wanted.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I took a picture of it.
Awesome. For the director, I am interviewing my husband, Leif Johnson, and we had the privilege of working on an island in California together. We were both directors, and I'm just going to ask him a few questions of how he believes he is the face of innovation with a director. So what did you think the biggest hurdle for us was on the island?
I think the biggest hurdle was just working with a lot of different personalities and just trying to coordinate everything so that everybody basically would be pleased with the work that they did, as well as the campers coming to have a good time. So I think that was the biggest part of that.
I think we both complement each other pretty well. Sometimes I'm the big thinker, the big picture thinker, but I think you're kind of the quiet storm behind the scenes where you're kind of holding everything together, making sure the process is going on. What do you think our staff liked about us most?
I think that we were very easily approachable. Our personalities allowed for the staff to come to us with any problems that they had, and bounce things off of us, and we were very open to hearing what they had to say. And then when we perhaps disagreed with them, we did it in a very professional way where nobody really walked away being upset by anything and understanding what had to be done and why it had to be done.
Perfect. So that's the director. Hi, I'm here with Laura Kratzer and her son Landon, who I call Peanut. And we're going to talk today about the experienced architect, which I think Laura has been a huge part of that in my life, of how to build things within a classroom, without a classroom. So Laura, what have you designed within your biology classroom?
I think there's two parts to it. You have your physical space that you have to design and make people feel excited, welcomed, comfortable, to set up the learning experience. And so you have to be organized. So if you take a look at any classroom I've ever been into, you know where to find things. Things are labeled. People who have never been in my classroom before can just take a look around and they can automatically find, pencils, extra work. There is a system for how to set up and run a lab. Everybody knows where to get the materials, what to do with their trash, that kind of thing.
Sure. And I think that goes into like the flow of the classroom, so to speak.
So you have to,
what is the hardest part in getting, I guess, that all prepped or set up?
I think it takes a lot of planning and forethought to think about, if I was a student, what would I need? What would my questions be? If somebody in my classroom helping, what would I need in order to help students? What would I need to help another teacher, kind of thing. So you have to kind of play all the possible scenarios that could happen ahead of time, and then plan for them.
So I think something I have struggled with kind of over the years, but I've gotten a little bit better with, is kind of foreseeing the future of like those scenarios of like, before they even happen, what could possibly happen on A, B, and C, and kind of how to have plans for all of those different things. What has been the hardest part about teaching for you in general?
I think what was really difficult at first was learning how to be flexible. I don't think I'm a very organized person, but I don't think my classroom is always set up the way that you have probably seen it. And so that has come with time. So I think it was frustrating to not know what to expect. What are kids going to be like every new year that's different? And so that part can be hard. And the longer you spend teaching, I think the easier it becomes to kind of think about all of those things.
Yeah, thank you. Alrighty, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Here with Corey Eisenhart, who I believe is a set designer, who has definitely taught me some key things to like work on in my classroom as well. So Corey, what are some of the things you do to keep organized within your classroom?
So I have lots of files and bins, and I utilize electronic, programs and platforms in order to keep things organized, and I have calendars and things like that.
One of the things I thought was interesting was last school year we had to do the run, hide, fight drill, and you guys all work with a lot of windows in your doorway. I'll kind of just scan over there if we can see it. And tell us kind of what you did, because you thought of all this, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us what you did with those windows.
So we wanted to have the windows sort of filtered a little bit so that people couldn't just immediately see in without necessarily putting up something that blocks out all the natural light. So I just went on Amazon and purchased something to make it work, and then I just sort of did it for all the rooms in
what we call the tower. Yep. So there's 4 rooms with a lot of windows. So I don't always see myself as a set designer, because I think sometimes I steal ideas from other people. So one idea that I stole from Corey this week via another coworker was just to kind of how to set up a grade book with like bigger blocks, and that seems silly, but like I can't write really small on the little blocks. So that was awesome, and I think that's kind of how you design the set in your room. What is a hurdle you've kind of seen in education in general?
I think that kids are sort of coming in with different backgrounds, and they have different attitudes towards learning, attitudes towards math, and so it's sort of a matter of overcoming sort of the predisposed mindset that they have coming into.
Because you love math, and this year I'm teaching some math, which is new to me, but I'm loving it, and it's kind of interesting for me to see like, yeah, these kids don't like math because they've struggled all their lives, and we are doing proportions now, and varied proportions to me are just like, let's multiply, let's divide, let's move along with life. But we really get stuck on what's the next step. So I guess my set design in that class has been really breaking things down, using different programs on the computer, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and also helping kids to sort of see that they're not going to know everything right off the bat, and it's more of that growth mindset of we learn from our mistakes and we improve, and yeah.
That's it. So that was the set designer. Thank you. I'm here with Jenny Bonnets, who I believe is the caregiver, and I believe this because she creates a lot of good relationships with her students. Jenny, why are relationships important?
For me as a teacher, I think it's everything. Why, when you have kids that are struggling, or really even kids that are successful, why should they do what I'm asking them to do if there's no relationship there?
What do you find the hardest thing about being the caregiver or building those relationships?
For me, sometimes it's the burden of taking on the emotions of the kids and not taking them home with me, or worrying about them, or my biggest struggle probably is this trying to fix them, or hoping that I'm going to be able to fix them, and when I'm not able to fix them, maybe in the amount of time that I would like, then I kind of it comes back to me, and then I feel like I messed up in some way or should have been able to save them, and it's not something that happens overnight.
Gotcha. Reflecting for me, I would say I touch and go within the caregiver. The hardest part for me, I think, is when you create a relationship and then it burns you in a different way, where a kid maybe, got away with something with a cell phone or going to the bathroom over and over again because you're trying to create the relationship, but then I feel like I get burned on the other side when we take advantage of that. So that's what I'm always trying to strive for, is just balance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you give a little bit because you're trying to build a relationship, but then they take
a mile or 20. Okay, excellent. That was the caregiver. After looking at all the faces of innovation, I believe that I am the storyteller. And the storyteller tells a story that resonates deep in my heart, as well as I can share the narrative with everyone else and have them buy into the product that I'm selling. So, for example, I'm going to tell you a story that I told my kiddos in biology this week, we were talking about characteristics of life, and we weren't quite getting it. So I told them the story of my husband and I. We went to work at a summer camp in California, and we lived on this island, and there's not much there. And it was awesome, but it was also quite the experience. And we lived in this little tent. And, you know, one night I hear this like scraping on the tent side. I'm like, hey, Leif, what's going on? What is that? Is that a kid like knocking on our door because they're sick? And he's like, no, that's Alan. And I'm like, Alan? Who's Alan? And he's like, that's the mouse that comes by every night. And I'm like, what? Why is there a mouse in our tent? And so we're cracking jokes, but I'm like, not good. And this is why. If you have a mouse, they're either looking for food, shelter, or to like have babies. And so the next day, I decided to get out, you know, the old rat poison and get rid of that mouse quickly because I couldn't find any food in our tent, but I knew things weren't going to be good. And so we killed the mouse, not a big deal. And something in my gut, like for the next 2 days, was like, why was that mouse here? Like, if we're all trying to survive, that mouse is trying to survive. He either needs like food, a place to live, or he's like reproducing. And I happened to just like shake the covers out of our bed. I'm like, let's just check things out to make sure there's not any creatures in the bed. Sure enough, there were 3 babies living at the bottom of the bed. That's right. Alan wasn't a boy, it was a girl, and she procreated. And so I died a little bit inside. But then, like I told my biology kids, you know what? We all know the characteristics of life now, people. So like, there you go. So I believe I'm a storyteller. I tell stories every day at school because I think it's important to connect things that have been in my life that I can share with other people. So how would I lead a group or a team through a creative problem-solving process? I've done this a few times as a special education teacher in our department, and what I like to always do is have an agenda so people know what we're going to talk about ahead of time, so there's no surprises. But I also like to have people start the conversation first, where I can just sit back and listen and see what or where the real problems lie. So what that means is I like to listen to people for what they're not saying, because I think a lot of times people try to harbor their frustrations, and that's not really healthy, because I think if we get to the root of the problem, innovation then starts to begin. And I also like to see people in different lights, because I think we all have strengths. And I think, you know, we're not all the storyteller, or we're not all, you know, the anthropologist. And where I have my weaknesses, I feel like other people bring that into the group of innovation. If those people, the other 9 faces, don't exist potentially in that group, I try to put on that hat slightly to see how I can, you know, fill that group out and get that conversation started. So the next question is, how would I lead with a mind to the future? So how am I going to lead? Or maybe I don't know the future, but how can I get people, I assume, on board? That comes with my storytelling, I think. I can rally a group because I always provide a great narrative. I believe that if I can sell the product to myself, I can sell the product to anybody. So I think that kind of gets everyone around the table to talk. And in the future, I believe that once people recognize what their strengths are of the faces of innovation, everything starts falling into place because conversations start happening. The final question is, how do I influence the thinking and actions of others to carry out plans for reform? So the way I try to influence people's thinking is having them take a step back and either going from the balcony or on the dance floor. And it's funny because I always called that lifeguarding. And now that we have this term, which is awesome, that I love, but I think that's what I've done in my career as a special ed teacher. And so when teachers I work with don't quite get where I'm coming from, I try to challenge them or give them something to think about in a different perspective or a different vantage point. I believe that, if you can have people open their minds to different, thoughts and different processes, and they might not always agree, but then they understand where maybe other people are coming from, that really opens, I think, the minds and hearts of everyone just to have an open dialogue and open conversation.